Let me tell you about the moment I realized she wasn't just out late. She was gone. The coffee cup was still sitting on the porch rail. That was the first thing I noticed. Cold, untouched, just like the morning she left. The spoon was resting on the saucer like she'd be right back to stir it. Except she wasn't. She said it was just a gathering. Just old friends. Just music and wine and catching up. And she said Kyle's name, her ex, as if that would just bounce off my ears without doing damage. When she left that afternoon, she told me not to wait up. So I didn't. I didn't wait up. I waited sideways. I waited bent in half with my stomach in knots and my phone glowing like a silent ghost in the dark. I waited while the house grew quieter and more unfamiliar with every passing hour. She didn't come home. But that's not the part that really got me. What got me was the fact that she wanted me to notice. She wanted me to sit in that house, pacing from the window to the door, imagining her laughing at his jokes and dancing to music I never liked. She wanted me to feel what she thought she'd felt when I missed our anniversary dinner to fix a server crash at work. Yeah, I get it. I messed up, but I didn't crawl back into someone else's arms over it. Around 2 a.m., I took the cup from the porch and poured it out into the grass. It splashed like a small ceremony, the kind that doesn't have witnesses. I opened the bedroom closet and pulled out a suitcase. Not hers. Mine. I didn't pack much. Just enough to disappear cleanly. Laptop. Charger. Free shirts. The wedding photo. I flipped it face down on the nightstand. I didn't have the heart to throw it away. Not yet. By sunrise, I had a plan. A quiet one. No confrontation. No yelling. Just a carefully placed truth. I made the bed, cleaned the kitchen, took out the trash, and left her something on the table. Not a note. Just her wedding ring, placed in the center of her favorite coffee saucer. Cold. Untouched. Just like me. I don't know what she expected to find when she walked through that door. Maybe she thought I'd still be there, sitting on the couch with my sad eyes and slouched shoulders, asking if she had fun. Maybe she thought I'd just swallow it like always, let it rot me from the inside like I had no spine, no limits. Maybe she thought I'd make her coffee and pretend she was just late. But she didn't expect silence. That much was obvious. I wasn't there. The lights were off. The air was still. No scent of breakfast, no warm cup waiting. Just the soft hum of the fridge and the unbearable truth that something was missing. Her footsteps must have echoed too loudly. I imagined her heels clicking on the floor, stopping by the kitchen table, where the ring sat perfectly centered on that chipped saucer, the one she used every Sunday morning, back when we still did crossword puzzles together. That ring must have said more than I ever could. No note. No message. Just absence. I didn't go far. I wasn't running away from the world, just from her. I had driven 3 hours to my brother's empty lake cabin, a place we used to visit before everything got too serious, before marriage felt like managing a slow leak in the roof. It was the kind of place where time slows down, where the only sounds are birds and your thoughts, and unfortunately, I had too many of those. I spent the first night staring at the ceiling, wondering how I let it get this bad, how I let myself become so forgettable in her eyes. She used to tell me I made her feel safe. Now she looked at me like I was a walking apology she hadn't forgiven yet. Maybe I wasn't exciting. Maybe I wasn't bold or charming like Kyle. But I never betrayed her trust. I never disappeared without a word. But now I had. By the second day, she finally texted. Just one line. Where are you? No, I'm sorry. No, we need to talk. Just that flat, cold question. I left it unread. That afternoon, she called. I watched the screen light up, her name glowing like a ghost I wasn't ready to face. I let it ring until it died. Then again, and again. She left a voicemail that started out angry, then softened halfway through. Cal, I didn't mean for it to go this far. You never listen to me. You never fight for me. You always just give up. That last part hurt more than it should have. I wanted to scream back. I gave you everything. You just didn't notice. But I didn't scream. I just sat there, clutching the phone with both hands, trembling like I was the one who had done something wrong. The next message came a few hours later. I can't believe you're doing this. At least come home and talk to me like an adult. As if that's all it took. A talk. A band-aid over a bullet hole. She didn't get it, still doesn't. This wasn't about the party. It wasn't even about Kyle. It was about being made to feel invisible for so long. I started to believe I didn't exist. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a new file on my laptop and started typing. Not a letter. Not an explanation. A list. A list of every time she dismissed me. Every night she rolled away when I reached for her. Every birthday she forgot. Every word she used to shrink me just a little bit smaller. I typed until my fingers hurt. Not to send it to her, just to remember it myself. Just so I could stop pretending I imagined it. When the sun went down, I stood on the back porch of the cabin and looked out at the lake. The water was black and still, kind of like how I felt inside. She hadn't texted again. Not that night. But I knew this wasn't over. She would come looking. Not because she missed me, but because people hate being left. Especially by the ones they were sure would never leave. And when she did come, she'd learned that the man who once begged her to stay had finally vanished without saying a word. I don't know exactly when her panic began, but I felt it like a shift in the air. It might have been when she found my clothes missing from the bottom drawers, the ones I never bothered folding properly. Or maybe it was when she noticed the shelf in my corner of the bathroom empty, razor gone, toothbrush gone, even the cologne she used to say smelled comfortably boring. But I'm certain the real punch in the gut was that I hadn't taken everything. I'd left the hoodie she used to sleep in, the one that still smelled like her hair, the one I couldn't bring myself to pack. I left it slung over the arm of the couch like a ghost of me was still sitting there, quiet and tired and over it all. The next day, I got another message. This one was different. Not clipped. Not cold. Calvin, please. Just let me know you're okay. No emojis. No sarcasm. That alone told me she was spiraling. But I didn't reply. I couldn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't about punishing her. It wasn't even about making her feel the way she made me feel. It was about finally creating space wide enough for her to feel the weight of what she'd thrown away. By now, I had shut off location sharing, disabled read receipts. I was a digital ghost. It was surprisingly easy once I stopped craving her attention. And that scared me, because it meant she no longer had that power. The one she used to hold like a blade. Sharp smiles, flirty dismissals, emotionally loaded silences. I could see it happening in my mind. The pacing, the overthinking. The moment she picked up her phone, not to call, but to check my banking app, and saw that I had quietly pulled my name off our joint account. Not drained it. Just removed access. Fair. Measured. Unmistakable. Then came the email. Subject: you left me with nothing. And in the body, just one sentence. So this is who you really are. No, Lila. That's who you made me become. I sat in the cabin, looking out at the trees swaying in the wind, and thought back to our wedding vows. How she cried when I promised to always protect her heart. How I meant every word. But you can't protect someone who leaves their heart behind at a party hosted by their ex. You can't protect someone who forgets yours exists. My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I stared at the screen, then flipped it face down. Instead, I opened the folder where I kept our old voice memos. She used to send me quick little messages when we were dating. Things like, I miss you already, or save me a spot on the couch, or my favorite, you're the softest place I've ever landed. I pressed play. Her voice filled the cabin like a haunting lullaby. But this time, it didn't make me cry. It made me angry. Because that girl, the one who left those messages, she was gone. And she'd left someone else in her place. A stranger with my wife's face and none of her warmth. Back at the house, I knew she was probably calling friends. Maybe even Kyle, though I doubt she'd admit what really happened. She'd spin it. Say I stormed out over nothing. Say I was unstable. Overly sensitive. Maybe she'd even try to get sympathy for being abandoned. But here's the thing. I didn't vanish. I paused her game. I stopped playing the role of the patient man, the background character in her spotlight drama. And now, without me to lean against or blame or belittle, she was free to face the silence she created. And trust me, it's louder than she ever expected. She had always been so good at rewriting the story. That was her talent, flipping the narrative so that any mess somehow landed at my feet. I was too quiet, too predictable, too accommodating. Like those were character flaws and not the very things that made her feel safe once upon a time. And now that I was gone, she was probably rewriting again, but this time, no one seemed eager to listen. I didn't know she had already reached out to Marcy, her closest friend since high school. I found out later through a mutual acquaintance. Apparently, Lila called her in tears, voice shaking, asking if she knew where I had gone. Marcy didn't have the answer, and she told her flat out, Lila, you pushed him. You dared him to care less, and now he does. What did you expect? I can almost hear the stunned silence that followed. Lila wasn't used to people not taking her side. And that was just the beginning. It turns out when you finally stop covering for someone, the cracks they spent years hiding start to show. I had always smoothed things over, made excuses for her coldness, smiled when people asked how we were doing, pretended things were fine, because admitting otherwise felt like failure. But now people were seeing the real story, and she didn't have her usual props to distract them. Her second cousin messaged me out of nowhere, saying he'd heard I left and wanted to check in. I didn't reply, but I read his next message anyway. Honestly, Cal, I always thought you deserved better. You were a good man to her. Those words hit harder than I thought they would. You were. Past tense. Like my patience had finally expired. Meanwhile, Lila was unraveling. She started posting cryptic quotes on her social media. Stuff like, sometimes the one who leaves is the one who's truly broken, and people will always twist your story when they can't control your chapter. I recognized the tactic. It was a fishing line thrown into the sea of sympathy, hoping someone would bite and reassure her she was the victim. But it didn't work. A few people liked her posts. Fewer commented. No one offered the comfort she expected. Maybe they saw through it. Maybe they were tired too. Or maybe, just maybe, somewhere deep down, they realized I was gone not because I was weak, but because I finally remembered I had worth. I wasn't at the cabin to hide. I was there to reclaim myself in the silence. To let go of the noise, the guilt, the endless cycle of apology. And the more I sat with that silence, the more I realized how much I had twisted myself to keep her happy. I remembered the countless birthdays I made special while she forgot mine. The anniversary I spent alone because she had a last-minute girls' weekend. The job offer I turned down in another state because she didn't want to move. God, I gave her everything I had, and she treated it like it was owed to her. Then came the call I didn't expect. My sister. She never got involved. Ever. But this time she did. She called me after Lila contacted her looking for answers. I guess she figured if anyone knew where I was, it would be my family. Are you okay? My sister asked, voice tight with worry. Yeah, I said. Actually, I think I'm the most okay I've been in a long time. She paused. Then, after a moment, said something I'll never forget. You know, I always wondered when you'd realize she only clapped when you danced. And that was it. That line. It sat with me the rest of the night. She only clapped when I danced. I finally understood. I was entertainment. I was structure. I was a mirror she used to reflect the parts of herself she liked. But when I stopped dancing, when I stepped off that stage and walked into the wings, she had nothing left to clap for. And now, she was alone in the spotlight, with the truth. She showed up at my parents' house. That's how far she had to go to find me. I hadn't been there in over a year. But she must have figured it out after exhausting every other option, calling my old coworker, texting two of my college friends, and apparently even messaging the girl I dated before her, which honestly stunned me. Lila always saw herself as the one who won. I guess now she was starting to feel like the prize had quietly walked away. My mom called me that morning. Her voice was calm, but I could tell she was shaken. She's here, Cal, she said softly. She's sitting on the porch like she doesn't know what else to do. I didn't respond. My silence made her sigh. She's not yelling, not crying. She just looks lost. I haven't seen her look like this before. Do you want me to send her away? I took a long breath. Don't tell her anything, I said. Let her sit. Lila never thought she'd be on that porch. Not like this. That porch had seen better days. Weather-worn, squeaky, always smelling faintly of garden mulch and coffee. We'd sat there together once, years ago, when everything was still new. She said it felt like a postcard from a simpler life. I remember smiling at that, thinking she meant it. But now I realize she never wanted a simple life. She wanted the performance of one. And I was just the co-star. She stayed on that porch for 3 hours. Didn't knock. Didn't ring. Just sat. Probably hoping someone would come out and give her answers. But my mom didn't budge. She made tea, watered the plants, and let Lila sit in her quiet panic. By noon, she left. That same evening, I got the first real message. Not angry. Not defensive. Just raw. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I broke something I don't know how to fix. There it was. Not I miss you. Not please come back. Just that. A sentence that carried more weight than all the rest combined. For a second, I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could feel my chest tighten. Somewhere beneath all the hurt and confusion, my heart still wanted to reach for her. Still wanted to believe she finally saw it. Saw me. Saw what she'd let rot through silence and ego and control. But I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I pulled out a notebook and wrote her a letter. Not to send, just to finally let it out. It started like this. Lila, you built a life with me like you were designing a stage. You hung curtains made of compliments, placed props called memories, and every day I stood beneath your spotlight, trying to earn applause. I danced when you were sad, I softened when you were sharp, and I shrunk every time you needed to feel big. But one day, I looked around and realized there was no audience. Just me, clapping for the both of us. And I kept going. Pages and pages of truths I never spoke. Little details that had eaten away at me for years. Her rolling her eyes when I got excited about things she found too niche. Her forgetting my favorite author's name after a decade. Her spending more time curating a social media post than sitting with me over dinner. I had blamed myself for so long. Thought maybe I was too needy, too quiet, too emotional. But the truth was, I just wanted to feel chosen again. That night, I heard thunder in the distance. The cabin creaked like it was remembering something too. I turned off my phone, lit a single candle, and read the letter back to myself in the dark. Not to be dramatic, but to remind myself I was still here. Still real. Still deserving of a love that didn't feel like a performance. Meanwhile, Lila was probably sitting in our house, staring at the empty place where my shoes used to be, wondering how the man who forgave everything finally found the strength to say nothing and leave. And in the silence I left behind, she was finally hearing everything. I didn't know she had booked a session with a couples therapist until I got the appointment notification emailed to me. She still had my old Gmail address from when we first got married, the one I barely checked, but still used for insurance and flight confirmations. When I opened it, there it was. A polite reminder from a clinic in our town. Your appointment with Dr. Meyer is scheduled for Friday at 1:30 p.m. Attached was a message from Lila. You don't have to talk. Just come, please. I read it 3 times. My initial instinct was to ignore it. I had told myself I was done. Not in a loud, angry, fiery way. Just quietly done, like a door closing in slow motion. But this felt different. It wasn't a trick, at least not entirely. It was a last-ditch effort, the kind people make when they're finally afraid they've lost. I didn't reply, but on Friday, I drove back into town. Not for her. For myself. For the part of me that still wanted closure, I wouldn't get sitting alone in a cabin forever. I parked outside the clinic and sat in the car for 12 minutes, engine running, watching the front door like it might swallow me whole if I walked through it. When I finally did go in, she was already there, sitting in the waiting room, legs crossed tightly, hands clasped like she was holding a grenade. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Not joy, not relief, shock, like she didn't believe I'd actually come. We didn't hug. Didn't speak, just nodded, like 2 strangers sharing an elevator. The therapist, an older woman with gentle eyes and the voice of someone who had seen too many failed love stories, invited us in. Lila started talking before we sat down. I messed up, she said, breath shaky. I don't know when it happened, but I stopped seeing him. Not just looking at him, I mean seeing him. And I thought if I could make him jealous, he'd finally react. And when he didn't, I panicked. Dr. Meyer nodded slowly. Do you think what you did was about Calvin? Or about control? That question hung in the air like smoke. Lila bit her lip. I just wanted to feel powerful again. I felt like I was disappearing in our routine. I stayed quiet. My hands were in my lap, fingers locked so tight they ached. But when the silence grew too loud, I spoke. Routine wasn't the problem, I said. You just got bored of me being consistent. You mistook my reliability for weakness. She looked like I'd hit her. And maybe I had. But I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. I gave you everything I had, I said, voice breaking in places I couldn't patch. And the one time I asked for space, to recover after my dad died, you said I was being emotionally manipulative. She flinched. The therapist turned her head slightly. I could tell she had heard this story before. Different names, same roles. I'm not here to be rescued anymore. I continued. I don't need a fix. I don't need a second chance. I need peace. And you don't live in the same world as peace. Lila cried then. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just quiet, trembling sobs. Like a woman who finally saw the end wasn't just possible. It was here. I didn't stay long after. The therapist thanked me for coming. Lila tried to follow me out, but I held up a hand. Don't. And that was the last word I said to her. But that's not where it ends. That night, I got a voicemail. Not from Lila. From Kyle. Yeah, Kyle. His voice was smug, like a man who thought he'd won something. Hey, Cal. Just thought you should know. If you're gonna disappear, maybe don't leave a woman like that behind. Some of us are still happy to keep her company. He laughed at the end of the message. I didn't laugh. I stared at the phone and smiled. Not out of jealousy, not even out of pain, but because I finally realized something she never expected me to. Letting go wasn't a loss. It was freedom. And if Kyle wanted to catch the grenade she'd become, he could have her. It was almost dark when I heard the tires on gravel. At first, I thought it was just someone turning around. Locals sometimes used the Lake Cabin Road as a loop, but the sound didn't fade. It rolled closer. Slower. Intentional. I stood by the window, heart lodged somewhere between my ribs and my throat, watching a silver SUV creep into view. She parked just off the edge of the clearing. Driver's side door cracked open. A flash of red hair. A trembling silhouette. Lila. She stepped out like someone wasn't sure if the ground would hold her. No dramatic entrance. No shouting. Just her, in jeans and a hoodie, clutching something in her hand like it might anchor her to the earth. I didn't move. I didn't even unlock the door. I watched her walk up the steps with eyes that weren't hers anymore. Eyes that weren't confident. Weren't calculating. They were heavy. She didn't knock. She just stood there. For nearly a full minute. When I finally opened the door, she didn't speak right away. Then, softly, barely above a whisper, she asked, "Can I come in?" I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I stepped aside. That was all she got. She sat on the edge of the old couch like it might swallow her whole. I could tell she hadn't slept. Her eyes were rimmed with salt. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke again. I know I'm the last person who deserves anything right now, but I didn't know where else to go. I nodded once. Not out of agreement, just acknowledgement. I messed up so badly, Cal, she whispered. And I thought if I acted like I didn't care, maybe I wouldn't have to feel how much I actually did. But then you left and I kept checking the door like you'd come back and ask what was for dinner. You don't get to miss me just because I'm gone, I said. You had me when I was still in front of you, and you didn't even look up. She blinked hard, and then held something out toward me. My hoodie, the one I'd left behind on purpose. The one she used to sleep in when we were still trying. Her hands trembled as she held it out like it was an offering at some altar. I kept it, she said. I kept sleeping in it, even after I stopped talking to you like a human. And last night, I realized I'd been holding on to you the whole time, even while I was trying to erase you. I didn't take the hoodie. I didn't need to. I don't want to hate you, she continued. I don't want to be this version of myself that pushed away the only person who ever loved me for all the parts one tried to hide. I don't know how to fix what I broke. You can't, I said. Some things don't get glued back together. Sometimes you don't want them to. Because the cracks don't disappear, they just shift. She broke then. Not dramatically. Not performatively. Just this raw, honest collapse of a woman who finally realized there was no script to follow. No control left to grab for. I thought Kyle could make me feel powerful again, she sobbed. But he made me feel disposable. You never did that to me. Not once. I sat in the chair across from her. The distance was deliberate. I loved you enough to let you shrink me, I said. And then I loved myself enough to stop. She covered her face with her hands. For once, I didn't rush to comfort her. That part of me still existed, but it no longer answered to her. And then she said something I didn't expect. I drove here to ask if you could come home, but now I see I'm the one who should be leaving. She stood, slowly, like she had just aged 10 years in an hour. She placed the hoodie down on the coffee table, quietly, gently, like it was something sacred. I'll never stop regretting it, she whispered. But I won't beg anymore. You don't owe me that. As she turned to walk out, I felt the ache in my chest rise again. But this time, it wasn't pain. It was relief. The kind that only comes when the person who held your heart hostage finally walks away. Without it, the door closed behind her like the final note of a song that had played too long. And for the first time in years, I exhaled fully. Not because I won. Not because she lost. But because I finally knew. She couldn't come back to a place she never truly valued. I stayed at the cabin for another week after she left. No more texts. No more calls. No messages from her or Kyle or anyone else. Just the rustling of trees outside, the steady rhythm of rain on the roof, and the sound of my own breathing, steady for once. I cooked real meals, slept through the night, read old paperbacks without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I even started journaling, not the dramatic kind, just small observations, like how the lake changed color at dusk, or how quiet the world became when you stopped performing for someone who never clapped anymore. It wasn't about punishing Lila. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about peace. And I didn't realize how loud my marriage had become until the silence finally felt safe. I eventually returned to town, not to go back, but to move forward. I found a small place on the edge of town near a bookstore and a coffee shop where no one knows my name. It's not flashy. It's not big, but it's mine. I took the hoodie she left and folded it away in a box I don't plan to open again. I didn't burn it. I didn't throw it out in some dramatic gesture. I just let it go. People ask sometimes if I ever talk to her. I don't, and I won't. Not because I hate her, but because I'm not that version of myself anymore. The one who waited at windows, who kept the coffee warm for someone who never came home. I've started smiling more, laughing without waiting for permission. I go on long walks without checking the time. I even signed up for a photography class, something I always wanted to do but never fit into our schedule. I've learned that sometimes healing doesn't come with closure from the other person. Sometimes healing is just walking away and never looking back. And you know what? That's more than enough. Thank you for watching Reddit Confessions. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of something from your own life, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where walking away changed everything? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your story below. We read every single one. Until next time, take care of your peace. It's worth more than anyone who doesn't see it.